And I'll start with the intro. So welcome everyone. My name is Audra Lavoie. I am a URI alumni career advisor. And this series is something that I'm really excited about. So what we're going to do today, right now, I'm going to do a quick intro to what this series has been. I'm going to introduce Lanre, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brian. Brian is somebody I work with the University of Rhode Island Foundation and Alumni Engagement, and he is a marketing and program specialist. He's going to run the Q&A with Lanre. I'll be in the back taking any of your questions and interrupting the two of them because you guys are the priority. So this whole series, this thing, it's all about entrepreneurship, and I've done it every year for the 4 years I've been here because it's one of my most favorite topics. I love entrepreneurship. I think there's so much creativity. There's so much, it's that all the emotions of what's possible, but also that anxiety. And since I focus on career services, a lot of times I meet people who are saying, do I want to look at entrepreneurship and starting a business as something supplemental? Like maybe it's my side hustle and something that kind of gives me a little extra cash and a little stability. Or is this my passion that I want to turn into a full-time thing? And where do I really want to take it? So it's a topic that impacts everything in your career, and I really, really love it. Now, Brian has been my co-planner for everything, and this is our 4th event of this series. And when we set out to do this, we go, all right, there's some foundation pieces. So we talked about where ideas come from and where to get some information, what other resources, and are you ready? And then we started talking about marketing, because marketing is such a big part of testing your business idea. It can be a big part of, okay, I'm ready to do something. Am I going to do some sort of fundraising? Like, how am I going to communicate it? But then also, once I'm running, I always need to be paying attention to marketing. So we started talking, brainstorming, and I was thinking I had somebody specific in mind. So now a few years ago, I went to an event for women's conference, and I met this dynamic woman named Helena. And at the end of the event, or the end of the orientation, her husband and kids come in. Sure enough, I get to chat with her husband, Lanre, who of course is a URI alum. Not only is he a URI alum, but he says, how can I help? What can I do? What do you have going on? And if you need anything, give me a call. So sure enough, he winds up becoming a mentor in one of our career readiness classes. He just recently spoke with the Alumni of Color Network. And then I had really associated Lanre with marketing, because I knew he was doing the marketing for this conference. I knew he had jobs in big companies in marketing. So that was immediately where I was like, all right, he'd be great to talk. That'll be terrific. And then Lanre and I have this other conversation and unfolds this family history of entrepreneurship, working in real estate in New York City, these other ventures of the New England Family Fund, which brought in like 6,000 people to the convention center, starting locally with a travel team for Providence, and of course, his latest venture, which is that thing I glanced at the front, which is 25 Bough, and he'll tell you about it because it's an awesome combination of financial readiness, community building, athletics, and revitalization, and so much more. So I have been looking forward to this. I'm excited. I'm grateful that all of you can join us. Lanre, thank you so much. And Brian, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thanks, Audra. Lanre, I'd love to just start off by, learning a little bit about, if you could talk a little bit about your general background. What was your time at URI like, and how did that impact you starting your career?
Sure. Well, first thing I have to say is, Audra, thank you so much for the generous introduction. That was incredible. And just naturally, because of who I am, I just have to give a shout out to people I see here. So BBO, Bobby Brito, Chuck, I saw you there with your distinguished Grace, happy belated birthday. And Sandy O, what's going on? And Jude, how are you? So I had to say that real quick. So I'll dive in. Sorry to segue, Brian. So first and foremost, I'm a talent development graduate. Academic excellence, I finished coming out of classical high school. I was a tour guide. I worked in admissions under people like Frank Santos and Michaela Mooney, who started me off on a real great, and John Wiltshire, who started me off on a real great path. I was an RA, resident assistant in Gorham, Bill Gorham, orientation leader. Shout out to Jane Richmond, who just recently retired. I did study abroad in Jamaica, was a radio DJ for 90.3 and did a lot of the union parties. Runner-up for Homecoming King. A lot of people don't know that. I'm still upset I lost. And yeah, just part of the BSLG. So as a sophomore, vice president of Uhuru Sasa, unbeknownst to many, we staged a peaceful protest in 1992, 13 points we enumerated. The two that I specifically spoke on was making Africana Studies a major, as well as bringing the Multicultural Center to the middle of campus. So if you see that vintage paper from back in the day, you'll see Lanre Ajakaiye next to it. And I just saw the video recently and I was like, man, I kind of sounded militant. But in any case, so that's my history. I finished with what was called a Washington Leaders Fellowship Program, interning for Senator Jack Reed and BET Networks. That's a program that I uncovered on a TD Taft Hall wall that had the cork board, the one right before you go up those creaky steps back in the day. I just was looking under some of the paperwork and I saw something about Washington Leaders Fellowship Program. I applied, got in, and that's how I finished my career at URI. Yeah, does that give you a pretty good background, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's great. That's fantastic. So going from there, what kind of interested you in entrepreneurship and what kind of made you think that, that was something you wanted to follow and go into?
Yeah, and Audra alluded to it. So entrepreneurship has been in my family since I've been young, and I kind of found it before it found me. So I was the kid growing up on Lexington Avenue in the Elmwood section of Providence that I'd find an old foosball table that somebody threw away. I'd convince the guys in my neighborhood, let's carry this to my backyard. I'd fix it, put some legs on it, get a ball. And then I created a club in my basement. My brothers will laugh if they heard this. And I charged admission to get into the club to play foosball for the table that we built together. I was that kid. I was trading baseball cards. I knew the value of certain cards and, I trade you for this one. And then I watched my father do things like, buy homes, which is what expanded my possibilities in my mind of what's possible. So he bought a fire damaged home on Superior Street. And I saw him renovate the whole thing from top to bottom, first to third floor, put tenants in it that had a home and just take something that was just ugly when we drove up to it initially. And then over the next couple months, just turned it into something that made the neighborhood more beautiful. So all of those things are part of kind of my start. My father started dollar stores in the 90s before dollar stores were even a thing. So I saw that whole process. I'd go with him to the vendors from India, China. He'd negotiate, haggle. He'd bring wholesale products from New York, Jacob Javits, to Rhode Island and New Bedford, because we had 2 stores back then. And he would resell it. And I just saw how that whole process worked. So that's part of it. And yeah.
That's great. It reminds me too, same thing. I had family background in entrepreneurship and, my family kind of learned almost my interest in it. And I went to URI and studied it, kind of sort of came from, seeing that firsthand, the vendors and, how the whole process works, from start to finish. So
it's eye-opening, isn't it?
It is when you see how much sort of goes into that background process of just, trying something new and seeing it take off. And
yeah, it's why I'm such an advocate today, and I fight really hard to put things in front of youth just to expand their awareness, because sometimes it's not even anything you say, it's just them understanding the possibility or what somebody does and what that is, and that can change their whole course. So not to digress too much, but yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So kind of going from there too, would you want to talk about some of the businesses that you've started?
Yeah, so I started a real estate brokerage in Manhattan before I left to come back to Rhode Island to have a family. It did phenomenal for the year and a half that I was in the city. When I left, it wasn't the same magic because I wasn't there. So there's a lesson in itself. I think, in the first 8 months when I was there, we probably grossed 225,000 in 8 months. And that was in Manhattan. And I left and because I wanted to start a family. So I came back to Rhode Island in 05. My first son was born in 06. I didn't want to raise a family there. So that's one of the businesses. New England Family Fun Festival is the other business I started. Audra mentioned that. And basically I brought Rocky Point, if any of you are old enough to know what Rocky Point is, indoors. So I didn't see something that I thought should be there. So I created it. 40 to 50,000 square feet. It wasn't a small event. I have a video somewhere online. Audra, if you ever Google New England Family Fun Festival highlights, the video will come up. And essentially, I got a lot of no's in that experience when I was doing it because a lot of people didn't know what it was. Like, hey, what is that? I've never seen that before. I got a ton of no's, and it was me going to corporations and pitching it. And then I got 14 sponsors that said yes, like Courtesy Kia, Enterprise, and different sponsors like that. So started it, and it had 17 Zumba instructors, Valerie Tutson, Len Cabral, storytellers, magicians like Lon Sorrell. Every hour on the hour, I had a performer. So Save the Bay, RISD Museum, Home Depot, just an event that people hadn't seen before. That was 5 bouncy houses, face painters. Just an event that people hadn't seen before, and they stayed for hours. And what was most important to me is that a family of 4 paid less than $12 for the whole family because of the model that I took. So a social entrepreneurship model. I opened the doors, 6,232 people to be exact. And it was nuts. Like people, the convention center came in the middle of the first year and like, well, Lanre, we've never seen anything like this. And this is incredible. And the next year, of course, when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you travel the road alone in the beginning because only you know what your vision is and only you can see what you want to build clearly. I'm often in that position because of, my Gallup strengths are futurist, strategic, ideation, relator, learner. So oftentimes what I'm talking about is like 400 people. So that was New England Family Fun. Rise Women's Leadership Conference. I call myself the brand architect, social, digital, the web, the logo, for my wife, because I obviously know what her passions are. So I wrap something around that. We've been together since '95. She calls me a co-founder. I reject that title. But in any case, Rise came out of the fact that in the capital city, I didn't see an event that was like the women that come over my house and drink my wine from our wine cabinet all the time. I didn't see an event that really bigged them up. So I was like, okay, we can create this. So at 3 a.m. in the morning in 2017, October, I woke up and I'm like, Helena, you should do a conference. She's like, what? Go back to sleep. I'm like, no, you should do a conference. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, it's going to be called Rise. I don't know what that acronym stands for. We'll figure it out in the morning. And she was like, in the morning, we started to figure it out. Then we took it from there. And my latest venture is 25 Bough Street, a project that, I've been working on since 2017 to acquire the building. It took 3 years to acquire the building because there were environmental land use kind of issues in the Olneyville section of Providence, which you'll find for a lot of buildings in that area. Finally acquired it September 2020. So it's a lesson in perseverance, right? So I started in 2017 and acquired it September 2020. It's 15,800 square feet. So it takes up a city block. It hasn't been used for the better part of 10, 15 years. And I'm building a model, quite frankly, that it's not out there. Nobody's seen what I'm about to build in Rhode Island yet, a building that you can walk in. So imagine if I took you back in time and you could, as a youth, walk into a building and learn financial literacy, career awareness, self-awareness. You could program in Oculus glasses with the Winner's Circle program. You could take development with career devs and Arnell Millhouse, jobs that land $70,000 to $120,000 a year annual salaries. You could be taught by Marcy Reyes, a professor at Rick, who has a financial literacy youth initiative. So there's so much coming with 25 Bough. Cultural Experience Museum. I can't point to one in Rhode Island. We don't have one here. So if you think about Boston Museum of Science, Smithsonian, think of a 2D, 3D interactive museum that a family or even school children would go to, and they would learn, interactive exhibits. So those exhibits can be Juneteenth. Those exhibits can be Black History Month. Those exhibits can be Latinx based. It can be the settling of Federal Hill by the Italian community. We can program a lot, but the idea is that it will infuse education that isn't taught in schools. It will do it in an interactive and engaging way, which you have to be today. It's not archives or books. I love books personally, but as we know, not everybody's reading like they used to read anymore. You got to excite people now. There's so much distortion and noise in the market. So that's 25 Bough. And all of them have a kind of motif to them, which is it's grounded in who I am. It's grounded in my passions. It's grounded in just things I naturally would be doing. I love youth. So I'm also the founder. It's not a business per se, but it's an organization, which is Team Providence Travel, which I started 3 years ago now. And Team Providence Travel was because the city of Providence for 25 years was kind of left out of the Rhode Island Youth Basketball Association. We can go into different reasons why, but I corrected that. Last year, before the pandemic, the 6th and 8th grade teams won the championship for the state. We almost won all 4. So yeah. Does that give you enough? I tend to go in different directions, Brian.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I was gonna say, just the 25 Bough project, it just sounds incredible. I saw messages in the chat, can't wait for that. That honestly,
I should be looking at the chat.
So unique and incredible. So we did actually get a couple questions too that I wanted to ask that were submitted ahead of time. So
Sure.
I'm going to ask you this one. This one's from Brandon. As someone who genuinely likes to interact and connect with others, how does one shift the conversation from a connection conversation to a business conversation without losing the sincerity of connecting with another person?
So for me, the approach that I take is I don't look at people as business relationships. I just look at them as I'm trying to get to better know them, their needs, where they're at. Like a lot of things, over time, you develop the best relationships, right? So I'll give you an example. So because I've developed the relationships I've developed over 15, 20 years, and those relationships, how do they develop? Let's go into that. So when other people are doing their initiatives, when other people have their causes that are near and dear to their heart, I support in the way that I can, whether that's time. It doesn't always have to be monetary, whether that's advice, whether that's information, whether that's, Audra saying, Lanre, will you speak? Of course, right? So the first thing that you kind of have to do is give of yourself. And then as you do that with people, your relationship strengthens, it becomes better over time. So that when you are doing something, then it's not even something like 25 Bough. Like, hey, I'm the first person in New England ever to be approved, not just African-American, ever, to be approved for Regulation CF by the SEC, to crowdfund real estate up to 5 million. It's not Kickstarter, it's not GoFundMe. This is the SEC that governs mutual funds and stocks. So people that buy into the campaign, they own shares in the building. When I came out with my campaign, within a month and a half, I was over 100,000. A lot of those early investors were people that I've known for years and I built relationships with. Now that I'm coming out with a business, it was an easy decision for them. Why? Because the foundation of what they're investing in, it's the building, it's the concept, it's the mission and vision, but it's also a lot of me. And I'm very cognizant of that. It's the execution that I've done in the past. It's the fact that those people, if I've given them my word, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I do X, Y, Z. So that's more important. And that naturally, Brian, morphs from personal to business. And it makes it so that when you do a business venture, you're well supported.
Right. I think that's key. That's absolutely key. I want to get to another question too that we had submitted ahead of time from Maureen. She said, I just listened to a radio topic that suggested businesses have pivoted with the pandemic with online presence and sales. I'm wondering if you've seen any pivots to communicating your idea process for businesses.
But there's always a pivot in business, Maureen. It's a great question. There's always a pivot in business. I pivot sometimes based on the messages that I put out. So what do I mean by that? If I put out an email, I'm looking at the open rates, the click-throughs, I'm looking at the heat map of where people click in the email. So the next time I send out an email, I may change the message altogether based on that new information I got. So I think business, especially now, it's moving at a lightning pace. Marketing is moving at a lightning pace. There's always a repivot that's necessary. For me, a lot of my pivots are data driven. So I'll look at the data, I'll look at the various data I have across social, across email for what I'm doing. And my pivots generally are based on that, as well as intuition. I feel like I kind of intuitively, for the segments that I choose to play in, which is family, community, I feel like I know the families that I'm around and the community that I'm from very well. But the pivot, Maureen, to answer your question, for me is continual. I never stay stagnant for a very long time because you can't, because people have so many different messages that are coming at them, so much different noise, that if you stay stagnant and you don't pivot, then you become obsolete and irrelevant. And that's what you see for some brands that we knew back in the day, that you're like Blockbuster. If I said Blockbuster to some millennials, they're like, who? What? It's because they didn't pivot. Streaming was becoming big and they're like, oh, that thing's gonna go away. No, that thing's not gonna go away, right? So there's always a continual pivot. For me, again, it's data driven. My pivots mixed with intuition.
Absolutely. I just to throw that in, I also really miss my corner Blockbuster. That was sad when that one went under for me. I took that personally.
Yeah, it's something about perusing the movies physically that I liked. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Maureen,
I like Netflix too, though. But Maureen, feel free, Brian, if anybody wants to ask a follow-up, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So we can keep it formal. They can ask any questions they want.
Yeah. Maureen actually also submitted a second part too to the question.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
Go ahead, Maureen, jump in.
I want to hear the rest of my question because I forgot it.
Maureen is interested in the publishing business, and she's seen that publishers do read alouds of their work. These recordings might stop someone from purchasing the book. So we've talked a little bit about communicating your idea. Do you know of any standard ways to protect your idea or models or products and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, the standard ways in publishing would be copyrights, right? So products, patents. But so those are the standard ways, well known. You file your form, SC. It's been a while. I completely forgot to say this, but I wrote a book in 2004 called The Power of Real Estate. So I am a published author in 2004. But to get back to the crux or the core of the question, which I heard it wasn't said like this, but I heard a different kind of question, which is, should I be giving content away? The answer is absolutely yes. Not all of it, but enough for people to pique their interest to see, oh, wow, what Maureen is saying or whoever wrote it. Yeah, I want to read more of that. And I think I should buy the book now. We have to remember the age that we're in is a content-driven age. So I can Google and I can YouTube anything, right? So if you're hiding kind of your content and your information, people will just bypass it because they're like, okay, I can go to YouTube University and graduate, or I can go to LinkedIn, I can go to Lynda, I can go to Udemy, I can get an ebook. Content is so much out there that you have to sometimes give it away. But here's the good news. You're rewarded for giving away content in structured ways. So when you do blogs, the crawlers, the invisible kind of things that eat up a page that look for keywords that Google has, and the algorithms that build the algorithms, they're always looking for new content. So the more that you write, the more that you attract attention to yourself. The more that you attract attention to yourself, the more chances people have to see your product or service or whatever you're selling. If you go as far as putting affiliate products into your thing, then when they click on certain products that you've aligned with yourself, you may get money that comes from that. So back in the day, I had a website called roadie365.com, and I'll build that back at some point. It's just, I have a couple projects ahead of me. But roadie365.com, it was content that I gave away for free. So what was it? Information on where parents can find events and what's going on in Rhode Island. Real simple, free. 30,000 views a month. And I put Google ads within the website. This is back in the day. I was getting $500-600 checks in the mail without doing anything because I wasn't thinking about it. It's just people were clicking because it's PPC, right? And then you get a check paid from Google because of that. There are a lot of different programs like that. So don't think to hoard your to hold all of your content. You got to give some away to get some traffic and to get some people to know about you. Brian, you're square move, so I don't know where you're at.
Well, no, because Kelly has a question, so we'll go Kelly and then Dee.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. This is great, fantastic information already.
Sure.
I am a little bit curious. When you first start a business, do you establish a DBA or LLC right out of the gate as soon as you have an idea? Do you kind of launch a product or an idea and then start marketing it and then worry about the logistical side of making it legal? I'm just curious how you first jump in.
Yeah, so I great question. I get kind of, it's jumbled up in that question, right? So let me start off with the way I look at it. The way that I look at a business is the problem first. I really, really think about the problem. And at scale, is it a problem of scale or is it a smaller problem? Or who has this problem? How many people have this problem? That's the thing I hone in on first. Then the second thing is before I even set up any entity, so LLC, S Corp, C Corp, public benefit corporation, like my campaign is set up for 25 Bough Street. Before I think of the entity to set it up, I'm first thinking of the pain point, the need, and the problem. Is that problem scalable? For me, is that problem one I care enough to work on, right? Because there's only so many hours in the day. I generally work on things that I enjoy, that's a passion, that when I do it, I feel good. Oh yeah, and by the way, it makes money too, right? So, and the other business I forgot that I own is in West Greenwich. It's called the Elite Skills Club in New England. I'm a partner of that. I started that crazily last year. And it's a athletic skills facility of which we don't have many in Rhode Island that has Vertimax and shooting machines and things of that nature. So Kelly, I start there first. Problem, goals, outcome. Really, really think about that. Not just does it bother Lanre, but are there more parents or community or people that it bothers? Then I dovetail into what's the entity that supports that. What do I mean? So if the problem I'm working on is community-based, and I say to myself, at some point, I want to start this and I want the community to own it, then that structure that I'm going to start is probably a nonprofit, right? If I say to myself, there's a problem, it meets my passion, I see a need, here are the outcomes, but I don't want to give this back to the community. I want to own it because I think I'm going to do it the best forever and it's going to be legacy. Then I might look at an LLC, C Corp, S Corp, a public benefit corporation. Public benefit corporations are relatively new. So companies like Patagonia are public benefit corporations. It's the closest thing you can get to a nonprofit without being a nonprofit. So that's that. So the entity to me doesn't drive the business. The pain, the need, and what people, the opportunity drives the business. And for me, my passions. Generally, you'll see I tend to work around things that are youth, community, women, athletics, health and wellness. That's because that's who I am. That's what I enjoy. That's what I like. Does that answer your question, Kelly?
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's what.
And we can also change that. So if you start one entity and your need grows bigger, you have the opportunity to change the legal format. Dee Dee and then Elaine.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Audra. Thank you, Lanre. It's really great to get to hear about your work. So I direct the URI Launch Lab. We support entrepreneurial ventures on campus. And so what we're always advising the students that we work with, and we work with students, faculty, and alumni, but we really focus on students. And we are always advising them to get practice and get real good at testing their ideas before they invest any time and money in them. And so like, I feel like you were just about to kind of get there because you were talking about, you know, is there the problem and the need, and how do you go about, so how did you test some of the, you know, value that 25 Bough you're assuming is going to bring as you bring it online? So how do you go about doing that?
So as you know, testing often revolves around directly speaking to segments, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the advantages that I have is because I'm in the community. I'll give you an example with Team Providence. Team Providence are youth that they have to live in the city of Providence. Bough Street is in Olneyville in Providence, Rhode Island. They are African-American and Latino, 98%. Not that you can't be outside of that. Anybody can join Team Providence. That's just what I happen to have. So I essentially have a group that I can talk to all the time about what I'm building, right? The other piece of it with 25 Bough Street is I have a youth advisory council. So the segment that I'm looking to serve, I actually have them on a youth advisory council, 25, because they will ultimately be the segment that's using the building for the Futures Hub. Mm-hmm. I've also coupled that with 50 plus influencers. So people that you may well know have visited the building. So President and CEO of United Way, Courtney, has been to the building. People from Bank of America, people from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So in that way, going over what I'm looking to build, I can use them who are experts in their respective fields, mm-hmm. and they can give me feedback and their thoughts on what I'm going to build, which solidifies a business case. Sometimes it changes it a bit, which is okay. And it gives additional input. So you have survey, which you can do traditional surveys, right? So earlier today, I was talking to Qualtrics about a conjoint analysis, which a conjoint analysis is a type of survey you do to unearth features and attributes that would be great in a product or service to a segment before you come out with it, right? So that's kind of what you're talking about. Yeah. So Qualtrics today, I had a lengthy conversation on what the conjoint analysis is going to be, how they're going to do it, what the questions should be, and then the report that they'll give me after that's tied to demographics and psychographics. So to your point, you can get that deep. I also have a marked advantage for 25 Bough Street that Leadership Rhode Island, of which I'm an alumni of, 2017, new to. The class this year actually asked me if they could help with the programmatic and interview different people across the different type of programmatic efforts that I'm going to do to start to, by time and persona, start to outline what will be at the building, like even down to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, summertime, this time. So for me, Dee Dee, all of those.
Yeah, so now you have a staff to do your customer development work, which is
I have a staff for 10 months.
Yeah, that's nice.
But all of those ways come together for me to point me in the right direction. And that's, and then a lot of times what I'm doing, I'm in the segment that I'm serving. I'm born and raised from Providence, Rhode Island. I went to Nickerson House, St. Mary's, Classical High School. So I understand the segment that I'm serving, I think, very, very well. And then the other kind of multi-generations, I just reach out to them and survey, ask questions, or bring in the experts who, when they're experts at their companies, they've done voluminous research around what they do. So if I talk to Anna Novice at the Rhode Island Department of Health, she'll talk to me ad nauseum about Olneyville and it's a health equity zone and outcomes are 9 years less than the rest of the state. And Lanre, here's what we see is needed. So I think those ways come together for me. And those are the ways I've used for Rise. Rise, I think, is upwards of 1,000 women now. We started with 500. The first year was 500 was the goal. And we had 582 with the fire marshal that wasn't so happy. The second year was 750. We had like 772. Both years we had waiting lists. And then we had to pivot. So go back to Maureen, because we had this little thing called a pandemic that made it so we couldn't be in a physical space. So we had to figure out real quick how to do a virtual event. So we did that. We had 600 people. So we were happy at that. So yeah, so that's how I've started a lot of the businesses I've started with those kind of processes.
Nice.
Yep.
Alan?
But I will say, Dee Dee's absolutely right with testing. The other benefit, the other benefit of testing, Dee Dee, is that if you do it right in a crowd-funded way, you're actually building a community who will then support the product when it comes out. That's the new thing. So if I along the way, and it's the same approach I'm taking to Bough Street. So if I along the way involve you in the process, hey, we want to do this product. Do you think the logo should be this, this, or this? And you get to weigh in. The more I do that, the more you're kind of like, wow, okay, yeah, this is my company too. I helped to bring this about.
I'm part of this. Yeah.
I'm part of this, exactly. And Bough Street is the same thing. So from the ground up, it's a community up project. So what I mean by that is I started off by having ServPro in the building because there was all kind of stuff in there from 10, 12 years. Like I couldn't walk in there in some parts of it. So I started by having ServPro remove contaminated kind of things because that's what they do. So they did that. Then the next piece of that was bringing in Youth Build Providence, who does light construction. They do internships in construction. And Youth Build came in and they did some demo, they did some removal. And the look of euphoria on their eyes to see the building, to work on the building, and man, this is gonna be this, mission accomplished. And then there's 200 plus community investors who are part of the project, who with the 50 plus influences, some of them have seen the building inside. So when the building is done, and some of the people on this call are investors, I should say that. So when and thank you very much. And when they've seen the project in the end, they're going to understand truly how far it's come. And there's going to be a pride because they helped in the transformation of their community. So that's another important part of testing. You're actually bringing people into the process because people sometimes don't just buy a product, they're buying an experience, they're buying a feeling, they're buying a community more and more. And so you have to think that way, right? Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry to digress.
We're gonna go Alan, Matthew, and then Sandra.
All right. So, first off, just to introduce myself, my name is Alan Adate. I'm a recent alumni of URI. I'm with a degree in accounting and a minor in leadership studies. I guess, Lanre, my question to you is basically, in regards to starting up a new business, like a new startup, what's like the approach when it comes to, looking for investors, especially if I have no credibility or if I have no past business, what's the approach and like, what's like that enrollment conversation looking like to get them to want to invest?
Yeah, make sure that your value proposition is very tight. Right? It goes back to the first part. What's the need and the pain point you're solving? Why is it important to solve it? The more you can enumerate that, so I'll give you an example. So 25 Bough Street, where I'm specifically deciding to start, the health outcomes are 9 years less than the rest of the state. Right in Olneyville, right? Beyond that, financial literacy, Rhode Island's grade, because states are graded on financial literacy, is an F. Schools have recently been taken over last year, city schools, by the state, right? There is no African-American, Latinx, cultural education taught at a high level. That's changing because of a new bill that was just signed. So I can enumerate the pain points very clearly. So when you hear okay, Bough Street is going to have financial literacy, career awareness, self-awareness tied to workforce. The investor gets it. Now, for most investors like yourself, because you're a CPA, the devil's in the details and the numbers, right? So the question is going to be, what's the return? Depending on the type of investor, there are different types of investors. There are some that will care that it's a social enterprise venture that you're doing, Alan. Some will not care about that at all. They just want to know the numbers. What's my return? When will I get my return? What's the payback? So you have to have that tight as well with your forecasting. It helps to know the market, to do market rates. So if you talk to me now, I know what the Portuguese Social Club charges for rental of their space. I have a multi-purpose function hall, right? I know what they charge for the bigger room, the smaller room. I know what the different venues that would be in my comparative market will charge. I then put that to, just as an example, to the percentage of time I think my place will be rented. And then that starts to, those different pieces across Bough Street start to become what you put in an investor pitch deck. You have to get very, very good and very, very comfortable about vocalizing your idea, your value proposition, why it needs to be done, knowing the type of investor you're in. Is it a VC? Are they more social enterprise driven? And talk their language. The proposal is everything. The way you present it is everything. Depending on the type of investors, if it's a VC or equity-based investor, you're probably dealing with businesses that have an economy of scale.
Okay, and just with that being said, did you find investors through like Google, social media, friends? Like how exactly do you find like specific investors?
Yeah, so
equity.
So in finding investors is different depending on what type of investors, right? So if you're talking again VCs, angel investors, there are different networks and portals that you can actually find them in that are aggregated. That's in the last 5 years is actually a plethora of them. If you are looking at investors in the way that I've just done it with 25 Bough Street, Regulation CF, then the investors are the people that know you. They're your family, friends, or they're people on social media that find out about you, prospectively through marketing, through articles, through media coverage. And they can become your investors if the value proposition that you have documented and what you're doing speaks to them. Then they become your investors as well. So when you use the term investors, don't think of investors as one type, because I'm hearing one type. Think of them as investors can be Regulation CF investors. And Regulation C is in Charles, F is in Frank, which came out under the Obama 2012 Jobs Care Act. Those investors can be non-accredited investors. The other types of investors like VCs would be accredited, meaning that they're making over $300,000 a year and have been doing so over 2 years. Non-accredited investors, what's great about Regulation CF that I'm doing is 96% of people out there are non-accredited investors. They're not making $300,000, $350,000 a year. And when you qualify through the SEC and get approved, the world is your ocean of investors. So investors can differ depending on what you're looking to do.
Awesome.
And then there's equity-based, no sweat, anytime.
And there's a lot of great resources on this too, on different organizations that can support you with that pitch deck you were mentioning. There's mentor programs, there's others that you can talk to about financing as well as grants. And so I have a presentation we did before, and I'll send that out to everybody. And that has a bunch of resources. Matthew?
Thank you. And first and foremost, thank you for speaking with all of us today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Matt Delva. I'm a 2020 graduate in economics and a minor in innovation and entrepreneurship. And then just my question for you is, just when you've kind of achieved like the level of success that you have, what would you say really keeps you driven and motivated?
I work off a social impact KPI. So to your point, Matt, you know, it's less for me about revenue. You know, some people look at it like, Lanre, when this building is done, it's going to be worth millions. Okay, right? To give you an, you know, that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is I'm looking at my community and a city that I'm from, that I still live in. I could live anywhere in Rhode Island. And I see just a lot of things that need to be fixed. And if there isn't an intervention, then the future looks less bright for, in 2050, what will be the majority, right? So I see just a lot of things that are happening, like the city school takeover, as I mentioned, you know, the grades of financial literacy throughout the state. There's just so much that, you know, I kind of work off of a social impact KPI, Matthew. I'm trying to see how many lives I can, with the knowledge I have and with the gifts I was given, how many lives I can change or alter in a positive direction. Yeah, so it's, you know, once you get over kind of Maslow's hierarchy, or the first, second levels, then you start to step back and you start to think a lot differently. You know, so yeah, social impact KPI is what I call it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Sandra, you were wondering about business loans?
Yes, I just want to say hello, Lanre. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, Sandy?
Audra, Alan, I'm so happy to see everyone. I always love being part of these discussions, but I come on a personal level, and Lanre knows a little bit about my, you know, just my passions, and Audra too. I tapped in a little bit. I'm also URI graduate, 1999, Human Development Family Studies. So just like Lanre, I'm all about the people. I want to serve the people. I want to change the people, because I feel that they can change me as well on a positive level. So that's really where my motivation comes from. I work full time in the healthcare industry, but really my passion is photography. I'm tapping into it now. I know I've had a really big idea of trying to move forward and making it a legitimate business. But I don't feel very confident in the business aspect, the numbers, because really all I want to do is capture photos and make people happy. But I'm struggling with figuring out, or how to determine whether or not a business loan is a good idea. I'm not planning on leaving my job right now, but if it takes me there and my business can grow, I don't know if I should make that move. So yay or nay to business loans, and why or why not?
So I'm going to start off before the business loan, and I promise you I'll get to the business loan. So photography as your passion, love that. I've seen your photos. I can see it's your passion. The first thing that I would do if I was in your shoes, if I stepped into photography, is I would look at 10 other photographers, look at their websites, what they're charging, what their services are, kind of what they're offering. That's the first thing I would want to know, like the back of my hand, in my close proximity, right? Because oftentimes, more than not, if somebody's using a photographer, it's probably going to be close to home, unless they have some kind of celebrity fashion photographer or something. But it's probably going to be close to home. So I would know that like the back of my hand. Photography and artistry, I don't need to tell you this, but it's you perfecting your craft, right? Because at the end of the day, when people see a picture, that picture is the advertisement and marketing, right? Then third, for me, I would think about influencers on social and in different spaces, IG, wherever it may be. And if it's me and I'm just starting out, I probably may offer to do their photo shoot free. And you'd say, wow, you're crazy. Why would you do that? Because once I do their photo shoot and I do an amazing job, if it's the right influencer, they might put up your photo and 200 people like it, or 400 people, or 600 people. And I'm not jockeying for a free photo shoot, just, but
I totally get it.
Whatever you see as the multiple of likes, you can probably 4 to 5x that in people that have seen it, because people often see and they scroll, right? And if you have that watermark, You know, you have your watermark, then they start to see, oh, wow, okay. And that watermark may contain your website, right? I want a picture like that. So that's what I would focus on first with photography. Now coming to business loan and when you scale past the point that it's your main thing. So business loans, like everything else, the offer, the terms, the annual percentage rate or the APR, the interest rate, are what you need to look at. Do you need a business loan or can you bootstrap it, right? So can you just, maybe it will take longer time. So the question would be for the business loan, does it help you to accelerate and get to more revenue quickly? Or is it an exercise of patience, right? So if it's to buy camera equipment because you have a lot of different gigs that people have given you for equipment you don't have, okay, then that's validated. But if it's, you don't have the demand yet to substantiate the investment yet, I probably would wait on a business loan and bootstrap it. So I'm going to say all that to say this. So that's the business loan, interest rate, APR, the terms, length, everything you have to consider, which largely will be based on when you're starting. So there are different business loans that you can get as an entrepreneur. So there are, you know, traditional ones you can go to a bank for. Other entrepreneurs, if their credit is less than stellar, they can get seed business loans for people that have less than stellar credit. Those are generally under 50,000 or less. But right now, Sandy, you joining, this is worth the weight of the whole webinar. So right now we're in a time that, this is a bonus question. Does anybody know how much is in the state of Rhode Island that's been given to the state of Rhode Island? I won't go to cities yet as a number. So Joe Biden, through the American Rescue Plan, has awarded the state of Rhode Island 1.4 billion with a B. If you missed it, I'll point you to it. If you Google American Rescue Plan state, what you'll see is that they are setting up a committee to award the money, which Sandy, don't knock over now, hold on to your seats, is going to be given away in grants. Yeah. So before the loan, which is the same approach I'm taking for Bough Street, I'm looking at all the grants. Why? You know, Alan will tell you this. I'm trying to minimize my debt service, right? So that's an exercise of patience, because if I can get grant money, then that's money that doesn't have a payback. And then the way that I'm looking at it, the services that I can offer to the community will be even better. But that's, as we speak, worth the weight of what Audra and Brian set up. That's out there now. Those committees are being set up. And if you missed it, they had an email that said, what is it? ARP ideas, submit your ideas for funding to ARP ideas at something.com, maybe Rhode Island Foundation or one of those foundations. They haven't decided how they're going to give it out yet. So I'd be looking for what that process is for your photography, because again, you're who they want to fund. And then look at the loan after, if it accelerates your revenue. But if you can bootstrap it, I'd bootstrap it with photography. If you have all the cameras you need now, if there's a demand, then, you know, grant business loan is a path I would take. If there's no demand, grant definitely, and bootstrap, and then loan later on. 1, 2, 3, like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we are at our end, but before we go, I know it happened quick. And we still went over, because we always do. Every time we have these business conversations, there's so many different elements to it, and it's such a energizing topic that there's like great questions. So Lanre, before we say goodbye to everybody, and this is going to be kind of a probably too big a question, but yeah, are there any final things that you're like, I really wish I could tell you about this awesome resource, or follow this thing, or, you know, ask yourself this question? Any big thought that you want people to walk away with?
Yeah, the big thought that I want you to walk away with is not everybody will always understand what you want to do. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So sometimes we have to couch those internal fears that we have and just do it. Like Dee Dee said, with research, surveying, and understanding. But a lot of people don't get past the fear of failure, so they never try it. They just keep it inside, wondering, and it could be just what people needed. So for the things that I mentioned to you, if I let the fear of failure eat away at me, Sandy's family wouldn't have enjoyed the New England Family Fun Festival, and I saw it was the best festival ever. Thank you.
So good.
Audra wouldn't have enjoyed Rise Women's Leadership Conference, and people in the future won't enjoy 25 Bough Street. People need you to be innovative and to bring your gifts and bear your gifts to the world. You have to get past that fear, and sometimes it's a lonely road, right? There is help out there, tons of help, but sometimes it is a lonely road, and you may understand your vision. Only you may understand your vision, but when you bring it to the forefront, then you'll realize sometimes critical success, and you'll wonder, man, why didn't I do this so much earlier? That's what I want to leave you with. Challenge yourself, challenge your fears. Everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes you learn more in failure than you do success.
I love that end note. So I have a big thing about the value of time. And I think when you are generous enough, Lanre, for guiding us and sharing all this experience, and same to all of you, this is your evening and you've taken the time to join us. Your time is incredibly valuable, and we greatly appreciate it. I will send a follow-up email to everybody. And in the meantime, thank you. Enjoy your evening. Have a great night.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.